The Amazon rainforest hides a secret beneath its canopy. For generations, we believed it was a pristine wilderness, untouched by major civilizations. That story is wrong. A revolutionary technology is now revealing a lost world of ancient cities right under the trees. This video will give you a front-row seat to one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of our time, a find that rewrites human history. How could sprawling urban centers vanish without a trace, and what does their sudden reappearance tell us about our own assumptions? What does it mean to look at a familiar world and see it completely anew? This idea of the Amazon as a green desert became deeply ingrained, a scientific and cultural assumption that seemed to make perfect sense. The logic was straightforward and, on the surface, quite convincing. The soil was famously poor, leached of nutrients by relentless rain. How could it possibly support the intensive agriculture needed to feed a city? The jungle was impenetrable, a wall of green that seemed to resist human order. To the eyes of early European explorers and many archaeologists who followed, this was not a landscape built by people. It was the ultimate wilderness, a place where humans were merely visitors, not architects. This narrative was comfortable. It fit a certain view of history and of nature itself. But like a faint, persistent melody heard beneath a louder song, there were always hints that this story was incomplete. Indigenous communities across the basin spoke of their ancestors in ways that suggested deep roots and grand scales, stories often dismissed as myth by outsiders. Occasionally, a farmer would plow up a strange, elaborate piece of pottery, or a researcher would find a mound that seemed too symmetrical to be natural. These were the anomalies, the quiet contradictions to the green desert theory. They were pieces of a puzzle no one believed could be fully. The gap between the official story and these scattered clues created one of archaeology's most tantalizing silent questions. What if everyone had been looking at this landscape the wrong way? What if the problem wasn't the land's inability to support civilization, but our inability to see the evidence of it? The stage was set not just for a discovery, but for a complete reversal of understanding. The answer to that silent question arrived not with a shovel, but with a flash of light. The key to unlocking the Amazon's past is a technology that sounds like science fiction. It is called light detection and ranging, or LIDAR. Think of it as a form of high-tech echolocation for the Earth. Mounted on airplanes or helicopters, a LIDAR scanner fires millions of invisible laser pulses toward the ground every single second. Each pulse is a tiny messenger of light. Most of these messengers hit the dense leaves and branches of the canopy and bounce right back, telling the instrument about the forest's roof. But a lucky few, a tiny percentage, find their way through natural gaps in the greenery. They slip through the leaves, travel all the way down to the actual soil, hit an ancient wall or a buried road, and then race back up to the sensor. The journey of each pulse is timed with incredible precision. By measuring how long it takes for the light to return, the system knows the exact distance to whatever it hit. Now imagine collecting hundreds of millions, even billions, of these precise distance measurements over a vast area. What you get is not a photograph, but an immense three-dimensional point cloud, a digital ghost of the entire landscape, trees and all. The real magic happens next. Using sophisticated software, researchers can perform a kind of digital deforestation. They instruct the computer to filter out all the points that returned quickly from the vegetation, isolating only the last echoes, the ones that made it all the way to the ground. When you strip away the virtual forest, what remains is a breathtakingly detailed map of the bare earth terrain, a landscape no human eyes have seen for centuries. It is like having X-ray vision for an entire continent. This ability to see through the forest without harming a single leaf has turned archaeology on its head. For the first time, we can survey hundreds of square miles in exquisite detail, finding the subtle signatures of human engineering that are utterly invisible from the jungle floor. A faint rise in the earth becomes a clear ceremonial platform. A gentle depression resolves into a network of canals. What looked like a random hillock is revealed as a perfectly pyramid, cloaked in roots and soil. LIDAR does not just find objects, it entire geographies of the past, revealing the true scale of a civilization that learned to thrive within the rainforest, not just survive in it. This is the tool that finally allowed the lost cities of the Amazon to speak. These lasers from the sky needed a place to look. Long before the first survey plane took off, the real detective work was happening at ground level, in the mud and the heat. Archaeologists, often working hand in hand with indigenous guides and local communities, were slowly piecing together a different story from the soil itself. In places like the vast, seasonally flooded savannas of the Bolivian Llanos Mojos, researchers documented enormous geometric earthworks, great circles and squares etched into the landscape. Further north in the Brazilian state of Acre, similar patterns emerged, forest islands surrounded by raised agricultural fields and connected by straight causeways. On the ground, these features were subtle, often just gentle rises in the earth that could easily be mistaken for natural hills. But to a trained eye, they were unmistakable signs of design. Scattered across these sites were other clues, fragments of elaborate pottery and tools, silent testimonies left behind by the people who built there. These ground-level discoveries were absolutely crucial. They were the first whispers of a lost civilization, the tangible proof that something significant was waiting to be found. They acted like ancient signposts, pointing the way and saying, "Look closer here." This partnership is the beautiful, essential heart of modern discovery. It is a continuous loop. Traditional fieldwork identifies the promising clues, the hints that say a deeper mystery lies beneath. Then technology like LIDAR comes in, scanning those exact areas from above to reveal the staggering, full picture that was hidden below. Finally, teams return to the ground, to those newly revealed sites, to physically investigate, to touch the stones, to understand the context, and to validate what the lasers have shown. It is a conversation across centuries and across methodologies. The boots on the ground ask the first questions, and the eyes in the sky provide answers that lead to even more profound questions. This groundwork set the stage for a revelation that would stun the world. The quiet mounds on the Bolivian plains held a secret for centuries. They were the only visible clue to a people known to archaeologists as the culture, named for a nearby modern town. For a long time, these scattered earthworks suggested a society of small, isolated communities, perhaps just a few families living on raised ground to avoid the annual floods. It was a reasonable assumption, fitting the old narrative of the Amazon as a place incapable of supporting complex life. Then the LIDAR planes flew over the Llanos Mojos, and that assumption shattered into a million points of data. What the lasers revealed was nothing short of a master plan written across the land. The scans did not show a collection of villages. They revealed a sprawling, interconnected urban network, a lost metropolis designed with breathtaking intention. At its heart were monumental platform mounds, vast raised stages that likely supported temples or the homes of leaders. Nearby stood towering conical pyramids, their shapes still distinct beneath the soil, pointing skyward. These were arranged around enormous ceremonial plazas, central gathering spaces that could have held hundreds, if not thousands, of people for public events. But the true genius of the design lay in the connections. Radiating out from these central hubs were perfectly straight causeways, elevated roads that ran for kilometers in precise lines, linking major sites together across the savanna. Alongside them ran canals, a sophisticated water management system that controlled the life-giving floods, channeling water for agriculture, transport, and perhaps even defense. This was a landscape entirely engineered. They did not just live in the Amazon, they sculpted it to their needs, creating what experts call a low-density urban system. Think of it not as a dense, walled city like those in Europe but more like a vast, continuous garden city. Residential areas, agricultural plots, and ceremonial centers were spread across a wide area, but intimately connected by this web of roads and waterways. It was a civilization built in harmony with the rhythms of the wetland, using the annual floods to their advantage rather than being conquered by them. This level of regional planning, coordination, and environmental engineering demonstrates a social complexity and a collective vision that rewrites the story of the Amazon. They were not simple forest dwellers, they were landscape architects on a continental scale. Their silent, earthen blueprint, now finally visible, forces us to ask what other grand designs are still sleeping beneath the green canopy. This was a civilization built not on solid ground, but on a brilliant understanding of water. The laser maps show a landscape transformed into a kind of aquatic machine, every feature designed with a specific purpose in the rhythm of the seasons. Take the monumental platform mounds where the most important structures stood. From the ground, they look like large, flat-topped hills, but from above, their true function becomes clear. They are artificial islands, carefully constructed from layers of earth and clay, rising high above the floodplain. When the annual rains came, and the savanna turned into an inland sea, these platforms became dry refuges. Homes, temples, and gathering spaces stayed safely above the waterline, creating permanent neighborhoods in a landscape that shifted from land to lake and back again every year. It was a simple, elegant solution to the most fundamental challenge of living there, but they did much more than just stay dry. They turned the water itself into a resource. Woven throughout the entire urban network are those intricate canals. Some were broad, likely serving as aquatic highways for canoes, moving people and goods between settlements far more efficiently than trudging through the mud. Others were narrower, perhaps channeling water into managed reservoirs or creating ideal environments for fish, a crucial source of protein. The water management was so precise that researchers believe these canals may have also fed into raised agricultural fields, a technique known as similar to the famous floating gardens of the Aztecs. By controlling the flow, they could enrich the soil and grow crops even in the wettest months. Connecting it all were the causeways. These were not mere paths. They were elevated highways, built up with soil to stand several meters tall, running in ruler straight lines for kilometers. In the dry season, they were roads. In the wet season, they became linear dams and the only dry routes across the newly formed waterways, keeping the entire social and economic network connected no matter the time of year. This is the true revelation. We often think of ancient engineering as conquering nature, like building a wall against the sea. They present a completely different philosophy. They did not fight the water, they partnered with it. They studied its patterns, predicted its movements, and then sculpted the land to guide that immense power toward human ends. They created a managed, productive waterscape that turned a challenge into their greatest asset. This profound harmony with their environment allowed them to support a population and a level of social organization that we never thought possible in such a place. A testament to a forgotten school of ecological engineering written not in stone, but in earth and water. The discovery in Bolivia was not the end of the story. It was the key that unlocked a continent. As the laser maps of the land spread through the archaeological world, a single, electrifying question took hold. If this was here, what else had we missed? Researchers turned their eyes and their scanners to other parts of the Amazon, and the jungle began to give up its secrets at a staggering pace. In the Brazilian state of Acre, vast geometric earthworks had been known for some time. From the ground, they are subtle trenches and embankments forming perfect circles, squares, and octagons, often hundreds of feet across. For years, their purpose was a mystery, seen perhaps as ritual spaces. But new LIDAR surveys are placing them in a completely new context. The scans show that these striking formations are not isolated artworks. They are often connected by straight, sunken roads, and are situated within what appears to be a managed, park-like landscape, suggesting they were part of a much larger inhabited and engineered environment. Further north in the upper basin, another revelation was waiting. Here, lasers peeled back the forest to reveal not just a few villages, but evidence of numerous sizable settlements. The scans showed clusters of plaza-centered communities, linked by road networks and surrounded by what looks like intensive, organized agriculture. The pattern was hauntingly familiar, a different expression of the same idea, a society that had mastered its environment on a grand scale. The clues are now emerging from Colombia, too, where early surveys hint at the outlines of lost urban centers deep in the southern jungles. Every new flight, every new dataset, adds another fragment to an emerging picture so vast it defies old categories. This was not one lost city, or even one lost culture. The evidence now suggests we are looking at a previously invisible tapestry of societies, a mosaic of Amazonian urbanism that may have spanned millions of square kilometers. Different regions, with different resources and challenges, developed their own unique solutions, their own architectural styles and social structures. Yet they all shared a profound, sophisticated understanding of how to live within the rainforest, not apart from it. The map of the Americas before European contact is being redrawn in real time, not with ink, but with points of light, revealing a hemisphere far more populated, interconnected, and ingeniously built than we ever dared to believe. The sheer scale of these engineered landscapes demands a fundamental question. How many people called this place home? For decades, the textbook answer was a scattering of small, mobile tribes, perhaps a few million across the entire continent. The green desert could not support more. But the laser maps tell a different story, one written in the geometry of plazas, the length of causeways, and the vast footprints of managed land. Archaeologists are now faced with a staggering recalculation. A single interconnected urban network like that of the could have sustained a population in the tens of thousands. When you multiply that by the dozens, perhaps hundreds, of similar systems now being hinted at across the basin, the numbers climb toward the unimaginable. The pre-contact Amazon may not have been a sparsely populated wilderness, but a living, thriving continent of people, potentially numbering in the millions, perhaps even reaching into the tens of millions. This is not a minor adjustment. It is a complete rewrite of the demographic history of the Americas. The implications of this new population picture are as deep as the rainforest soil. If millions more people lived here for thousands of years, then the very nature of the Amazon itself comes into question. This brings us to a revolutionary and humbling idea. The iconic rainforest, the symbol of pristine nature, is not entirely a wild place. It is, in significant part, a garden. The incredible biodiversity we see today, the specific arrangement of useful trees like the Brazil nut or the palm, may be a legacy of ancient human stewardship. These societies did not just build cities, they likely shaped the forest's composition over generations, planting, tending, and cultivating in ways that left a permanent botanical fingerprint. The Amazon, as we know it, might be the world's greatest and most enduring monument to a lost civilization, a living memory of the people who learned to thrive within its green heart. This transforms the rainforest from a backdrop to human history into a central character, a co-creation of humanity and nature on a scale we are only beginning to comprehend. But if millions thrived here, where did they all go? The silence that followed these great civilizations is as profound as their discovery. These were not people who simply packed up and moved on, leaving their cities clean and empty. Their disappearance is one of history's great tragedies, and its cause, while complex, points to a single devastating catalyst. The prevailing theory, supported by a growing body of evidence, points to the catastrophic arrival of Europeans in the 16th century. It is important to understand that these Amazonian societies, like all complex cultures, likely faced their own internal challenges over time. Shifts in climate, the strain of maintaining such vast engineered landscapes, or evolving social dynamics may have led to periods of change or even decline. But these were processes that societies adapt to. They were part of the long story of any civilization. What they could not adapt to, what no one on the continent was prepared for, was biological invasion. When European ships made landfall, they carried invisible passengers far deadlier than any soldier, old world diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza. For populations in the Americas, who had lived in isolation from these pathogens they had no natural immunity whatsoever. The result was not just illness, it was societal collapse on an unimaginable scale. Historical accounts from the coasts describe pandemics that swept through communities, sometimes killing 90% or more of the people in a matter of years. Crucially, these plagues did not wait for conquistadors to hack their way inland. They traveled. They raced ahead along indigenous trade routes that spanned the continent, passing from community to community, village to city, long before any European ever laid eyes on the Amazon basin. Imagine the horror. A thriving, interconnected network begins to hear whispers of a terrible sickness from distant neighbors. Then, it arrives. The social order, built on knowledge, leadership, and collective labor, frays as elders and leaders are lost. The careful maintenance of canals and causeways falls away as the population plummets. The survivors, shattered and vastly outnumbered by the silent forest, would have had little choice but to disperse, to retreat into smaller, mobile groups for survival. Within a few generations, the great plazas stood empty, the canals silted over, and the pyramids became mere hills once more. The jungle did not conquer these cities. It simply flowed back into the void they left behind, a green tide covering a world of memory. This means the Amazon we later explorers saw, the so-called pristine wilderness, was in fact a landscape of recent and profound loss, a garden slowly forgetting its gardeners. The true legacy of these societies survived not in stone, but in the knowledge and stories carried by the descendants who endured, and now, in the ghostly maps being drawn by light from the sky. The silent, fertile proof of their genius is still in the ground today. Scattered across the Amazon basin, often concentrated around these newly revealed archaeological sites, are strange, dark patches of earth. To the untrained eye, they might look unremarkable, just a different color in the soil. But to scientists, these patches are a revelation. They are called Terra, Portuguese for black earth, and they are not natural. This is soil that was deliberately created by human hands, an ancient technology of astonishing power. While the surrounding rainforest soil is famously thin, acidic, and nutrient-poor, A challenge for any farmer, Terra is deep, dark, and incredibly rich. It is packed with charcoal from controlled burns, broken pottery, composted food waste, and other organic materials. This human-made recipe created a super soil, a living, self-renewing ecosystem that remains fertile for centuries, even after its creators are gone. LIDAR maps often show the precise outlines of these dark earth patches, revealing them not as random occurrences, but as deliberate features of the urban landscape. Clustered around settlements and along ancient roadways, this soil is the smoking gun, the definitive answer to the question of how these vast societies fed themselves. They did not simply take from the land, they actively built it up, transforming poor dirt into a lasting resource. This points to a revolutionary agricultural philosophy, a system we now call agroforestry. Forget the image of vast, open fields of a single crop. The Amazonian model was something entirely different. Instead of clearing the forest, they curated it. They would selectively manage the jungle, planting and tending a diverse array of useful species right among the existing trees. Picture a layered food forest. Tall canopy trees like the Brazil nut provided shade and valuable nuts. Below them, fruit trees like cacao and palm species offered sustenance. At ground level, root vegetables and medicinal plants would thrive in the enriched Terra soils. This was not a wild jungle, it was a cultivated, productive garden on a continental scale. It provided a continuous, year-round harvest of food, building materials, fibers, and medicines, all while maintaining the forest canopy and its vital biodiversity. This system stands in stark contrast to the destructive slash-and-burn agriculture we often associate with the tropics today. That method depletes the soil in a few seasons, forcing constant expansion and deforestation. The ancient Amazonian system was precisely the opposite. It was about building permanent fertility, about investing in the land so it could sustain generation after generation. They were master gardeners who understood that the true wealth of the rainforest was not in clearing it, but in learning its intricate, interconnected logic and gently guiding it to support human life. Their greatest monument was not a pyramid of stone, but a living, breathing, edible forest. The silent geometry of these cities tells us about the people who built them. To move that much earth, to lay out causeways that run straight for kilometers, to raise pyramids that still shape the land, you need more than just willing hands. You need a vision and a society organized enough to see it through across generations. The sheer scale of the work implied by the laser maps points to a level of social and political complexity that fundamentally rewrites who we imagine these Amazonian peoples to be. This was not a collection of independent villages, occasionally helping their neighbors. The coordination required to plan and maintain a regional network of canals, roads, and monumental centers suggests centralized leadership. A shared purpose that could mobilize and direct labor on a massive scale. Think of it as a vast, ancient public works project, one that required surveyors to plot the straight lines, engineers to understand hydrology, and managers to organize the thousands of people needed to move the soil basket by basket. This level of specialization hints at a stratified society, one with distinct roles. There would have been the planners, perhaps a class of priest engineers who understood the stars, the water cycles, and sacred geometry. There would have been the rulers or chiefs who could command the labor and resources. And there would have been the skilled artisans and the countless workers who turned the vision into reality. The LIDAR evidence supports this idea of a tiered social world. The scans often show a clear settlement hierarchy. At the top are those huge, central sites with multiple pyramids and grand plazas, obvious hubs of power and ceremony. Radiating out from them are smaller, subsidiary communities, connected by the causeways, likely tied to the center through kinship, trade, or obligation. This pattern looks less like a loose collection of tribes and more like organized political territories, perhaps what anthropologists call chiefdoms or even early forms of state-level society. They had the capacity for collective action that reshaped an entire region. This shifts the narrative in a profound way. For a long time, the term Amazonian society conjured images of small, egalitarian bands. The new evidence does not erase the deep knowledge and resilience of such groups, but it reveals that the social landscape of the ancient Amazon was far more diverse and dynamic. Here, in the heart of the rainforest, arose societies with the organizational power to execute landscape-scale engineering. Societies that could coordinate the work of thousands to bend the very fabric of their world to a shared dream. Their legacy is not written on parchment, but in the enduring shape of the earth itself, a testament to what human cooperation can achieve. A colorful LIDAR map is a breathtaking sight, but it is also a profound puzzle. Those swirling patterns of elevation, those neat geometric shapes, they do not come with labels. Interpreting this digital landscape is where the real detective work begins, a slow, meticulous process of turning points of light into a story of human life. The first and greatest challenge is learning to read the map's silent language. The scan shows everything that alters the ground's surface, but nature is a sculptor too. A termite mound, a fallen giant tree that left a root pit, even an ancient river meander can create shapes that, from above, look tantalizingly artificial. Archaeologists must become masters of pattern recognition, training their eyes to spot the signatures of human intention. A perfectly straight line in the rainforest is almost always a human road. A cluster of mounds arranged in a precise rectangle around a flat plaza speaks of planning, not random chance. A network of canals that connects logically to a settlement tells a story of engineering. Distinguishing the design from the accidental is the foundational step in listening to what these lost places are trying to say. Once a feature is identified as human-made, the next question is, what was it for? A large, flat-topped platform mound could have been a temple foundation, a leader's residence, or a communal stage for ceremonies. A smaller, rounded mound nearby might be a burial site or a storage facility. The LIDAR gives the shape, but not the purpose. This is where the digital world must meet the physical one in a process called ground truthing. Teams of researchers, guided by the precise GPS coordinates from the scan, embark on expeditions into the jungle to find these ghostly outlines in the flesh. They dig test pits, carefully sifting through layers of soil. They look for artifacts, fragments of pottery, tools, or charcoal from ancient hearths. A piece of pottery found on a platform tells them people lived or worked there. Charcoal can be carbon dated, providing a hard number, a year when that fire burned, anchoring this timeless digital model into real history. This physical evidence is what transforms a curious shape on a map into a home, a workshop, or a sacred space. The work also faces a unique chronological challenge. A LIDAR map is a single, frozen moment, a snapshot of the landscape as it is today. It shows all the structures at once, but it cannot tell us which were built first. Did the Great Pyramid come before the surrounding plaza, or after? Did the network of roads grow out from a central hub, or were they built to connect pre-existing villages? Untangling this sequence is like trying to read a book where all the pages have been glued together. Archaeologists use the clues from ground truthing to piece it together. They might find that artifacts from a smaller mound are of an older style than those on the large central platform. suggesting the settlement grew over time. They analyze soil layers to see where one structure cuts through another, revealing which came first. This painstaking work slowly reconstructs the biography of a place, showing not just what was there, but how it evolved across generations. This reminds us that every stunning digital reconstruction we see is not the final answer, but the first, thrilling question. The laser map is the opening line of a much longer story. It provides the grand outline, the scale and the scope that was impossible to see before. But filling in that outline with color, with meaning, with the daily lives of the people who walked those causeways, that requires the slow, humble work of boots on the ground, trowels in the soil, and minds piecing together fragments of a forgotten world. The discovery is not a moment, but a conversation, one that continues every time a researcher compares a glowing screen to the quiet earth beneath their feet. The silent earthworks tell no stories of their own, so how do we place them in time? Without stone inscriptions or written records, archaeologists must become detectives of decay, reading the faint chemical signatures left behind in the soil and charcoal. The primary tool for this is radiocarbon dating. When ancient people lit a cooking fire or cleared land for construction, they left behind charcoal, a material that locks in a radioactive isotope of carbon at the moment the wood stopped growing. By measuring how much of this isotope has decayed over the centuries, scientists can pinpoint within a range when that tree was alive. A piece of charcoal from a hearth on a platform mound, or organic material mixed into the fill of a causeway, becomes a tiny time capsule, giving a direct date for human activity at that exact spot. For dating the earthworks themselves, another ingenious method comes into play: optically stimulated luminescence dating. This technique measures when grains of quartz in the soil were last exposed to sunlight. When the builders shoveled soil to raise a mound, they buried those mineral grains, shielding them from light. In the darkness, the grains began storing energy from natural background radiation. In a lab, scientists can stimulate them with light, causing them to release that stored energy as a faint glow. The intensity of that glow tells them how long those grains have been buried, effectively dating the construction event itself. Together, these methods are building a timeline. Current evidence suggests the culture, with its vast networks of canals and pyramids, flourished between roughly 500 and 1400 AD. Other emerging complex societies across the basin seem to operate on a similar grand scale across these centuries. This is crucial. It places the peak of these Amazonian civilization centuries, even a full millennium, before European ships ever reached the Americas. This fact alone silences an old and persistent assumption. These were not cultures built by influence from or contact with the famous empires of the Andes, like the Inca. The Inca Empire rose to power in the 15th century, long after the networks were already ancient history. The cities beneath the Amazon canopy were purely indigenous innovations, homegrown masterpieces of social organization and environmental engineering that developed entirely independently. They represent a unique, parallel path to complexity, a testament to the boundless creativity of human societies when presented with a challenge as immense and alive as the rainforest itself. Yet for the people whose ancestors walked these causeways, the laser maps are not revealing a secret, they are echoing a memory. Across the Amazon, indigenous communities have passed down stories for generations, narratives that speak of a time when the forest was filled with great settlements, powerful chiefs, and a world far more populous than the one that met later explorers. These oral histories were often dismissed by outsiders as myth or symbolic legend, a poetic way of speaking about the past. Now, the science of LIDAR is providing a startlingly literal translation. The geometric shapes on the screen, the outlines of plazas and pyramids, are giving a tangible, physical form to stories that have lived in the air and in the telling for centuries. This is not a case of science discovering something entirely unknown, but of one way of knowing finally catching up to another. The sophisticated engineering, now visible from the sky, has always existed in the deep historical memory of the rainforest's original inhabitants. This convergence creates something profoundly important, a powerful bridge between Western scientific methodology and indigenous knowledge systems. For archaeology, it is a moment of humility and immense opportunity. Researchers are increasingly recognizing that the most complete understanding of these sites comes not from the laser scan or the excavation trench alone, but from a collaborative dialogue. When an elder points to a specific forest island and recounts a story of a founding ancestor, that is not just a tale, it is a piece of data. A cultural map that can guide where to look and how to interpret what is found. The scientific process provides the dates and the detailed spatial analysis, while the oral traditions provide the context, the meaning, and the human connection that no machine can ever detect. This partnership validates long-held truths that were marginalized, fostering a form of research that respects and actively incorporates the deep memory of the land itself. It transforms the work from an external investigation into a shared act of remembering. The true revelation, then, may be less about the cities themselves and more about the nature of history. We are learning that history is not stored in just one way, in written records or stone monuments. It is also carried in language, in ceremony, and in stories told under the canopy, patiently waiting for the world to develop the right tools to listen. This collaboration suggests a future where discovery is not about taking knowledge from a place, but about reuniting different kinds of knowledge to hear the full, rich story of a people and their extraordinary home. This new form of seeing, however, brings with it a profound new responsibility. The laser maps are not just scientific data, they are also, in a very real sense, treasure maps. And that reality introduces a complex ethical dilemma that every researcher in this field now navigates. The moment a hidden city's coordinates become known, its greatest threat often arrives. Looters, armed with metal detectors and shovels, can descend upon these pristine sites, shattering ancient pottery for trinkets and tearing apart burial mounds in search of gold. They leave behind not just holes in the ground, but holes in history, destroying the context that tells us who these people were and how they lived. Uncontrolled tourism, however well-intentioned, presents another danger. A sudden influx of visitors without proper management can erode ancient earthworks, introduce invasive plant species, and overwhelm the delicate balance of the local ecosystem. The very act of revealing a lost world can, paradoxically, put it at risk of being lost all over again. This forces archaeologists into a difficult position. How do you share a world-changing discovery with the public, while also protecting that discovery from the public? The answer is increasingly one of strategic silence and collaboration. Many research teams now keep the precise locations of the most sensitive sites confidential, sharing detailed data only with trusted colleagues and government heritage bodies. They work to establish protected areas before any announcement is made, putting legal and physical safeguards in place. The goal is to ensure that exploration leads to preservation, not exploitation. But the ethical considerations run even deeper than physical protection. These findings hold immense cultural and political weight. There is a risk that evidence of past large-scale societies could be misinterpreted or weaponized. For instance, some might wrongly use this evidence to argue that the Amazon was an empty landscape before European contact, a narrative that has been used in the past to justify seizing indigenous lands. Alternatively, others might claim that because a grand civilization once fell, the current forest is therefore not a true wilderness worth protecting. Both are dangerous misreadings of the evidence. The true story the lasers tell is one of continuous, ingenious habitation and profound environmental stewardship, a legacy that belongs directly to the living descendants of these ancient engineers. This brings us to the most crucial ethical layer of all. For the indigenous communities whose ancestral homes are being revealed from the sky, this is not an academic exercise. It is a deeply personal matter of heritage, memory, and sovereignty. Researchers now understand they are not just uncovering artifacts, they are handling someone's family history. The guiding principle is moving from a model of extraction to one of partnership. This means involving communities from the very beginning of a project, seeking their free and informed consent before any scanning or excavation begins. It means respecting their wishes if they choose not to have a sacred site disturbed or publicly identified. It means ensuring that the knowledge gained is shared with them first, and that they have a central voice in how their history is presented to the world. In this light, the most important discovery may not be a city, but a new way of doing archaeology itself. The ultimate success of these technological marvels will not be measured in the number of pyramids found, but in whether they help strengthen the rights, the knowledge, and the cultural continuity of the people who have always known this land was never empty. The future of the past depends on listening as much as looking. The laser maps have drawn a line in the soil, one that connects the deep past directly to our present choices. This technology does more than reveal lost cities. It reframes the entire purpose of the Amazon rainforest in our modern world. We can no longer view it solely as a vital ecological lung for the planet, a crucial reservoir of biodiversity and climate stability, though it remains all of those things. The canopy now shelters a second, equally profound treasure. It is a vast, open-air museum of human history, a living archive of cultural achievement written across the landscape itself. Every ancient causeway, every ceremonial plaza, every patch of fertile black earth is a chapter in a story we are only beginning to read. This realization creates a powerful new imperative for conservation, a dual mandate that is both ecological and archaeological. The fight to protect the Amazon is no longer just about saving trees and wildlife. It is about safeguarding the physical memory of civilizations that mastered sustainable living within this very environment. This adds a compelling, human dimension to the conservation argument. An area slated for clearing might appear as empty, unused land to a developer's report. But a LIDAR scan can reveal it as the heart of an ancient garden city, a place of profound historical significance. This knowledge transforms the value of the land. It is not merely a resource to be extracted, but a heritage site to be preserved, a classroom for understanding how humanity can thrive in balance with nature. The fate of these silent cities is now inextricably linked to the fate of the living forest that guards them. A fire that ravages the canopy does not just burn trees, it risks incinerating the subtle earthen architecture below, melting centuries of history into ash. Deforestation does not just create a pasture, it can erase the last visible footprint of a people who called that place home for generations. This connection offers a new kind of leverage in the urgent struggle to protect these regions. It provides a concrete, culturally resonant reason to designate protected areas, to enforce land rights, and to support the indigenous communities who are the direct inheritors of this legacy. The argument for preservation becomes richer and more multidimensional. We are not just protecting habitat, we are honoring a monumental human accomplishment, one that holds vital lessons for our own future. The ancient Amazonians left behind a blueprint for living well within ecological limits. Their greatest engineering feat was not a pyramid, but a sustainable system that endured for 1,000 years. To lose the forest now would be to destroy that blueprint twice over, first by forgetting it, and then by obliterating the very evidence that it ever existed. The lasers have given us a chance to remember, and with that memory comes a profound responsibility. The question is no longer what we can take from the rainforest, but what we can learn from it and what we are willing to save. This distinct approach forces us to rethink what a city even is. When we picture ancient urban centers, our minds often go to the stone jungles of the Maya, with their towering limestone pyramids piercing the sky, or the Aztec capital of a grid of canals and temples built on an island in a lake. These are images of concentrated power, of dense populations living in tight quarters, their world defined by plaster, stone, and monumental architecture. The Amazonian model presents a powerful contrast. Here, the city was not a fortress against nature, but an extension of it. Instead of clearing the forest to build a dense core of stone, they wove their civic spaces directly into the living fabric of the rainforest. The result was a low-density urbanism, a sprawling garden city where neighborhoods, ceremonial plazas, and agricultural plots were spread across a vast, intentionally managed landscape, connected by those long, straight causeways. Think of the difference between a modern, densely packed downtown and a sprawling suburban network of parks, greenbelts, and residential areas. Both are urban, both require complex infrastructure and governance, but they express a fundamentally different relationship with space and environment. The Maya built up, carving their grandeur from the limestone bedrock. The Amazonians built out, sculpting the earth and curating the forest to create a diffuse but deeply interconnected civic organism. This is not a judgment of which was more advanced. Both systems represent the absolute pinnacle of social organization and engineering for their specific contexts. The civilizations mastered stone, astronomy, and hydrology in a seasonal landscape. The Amazonian civilizations mastered soil, silviculture, and large-scale landscape engineering in a perpetually living world. They solved the same core problem: how to support a large, stable population, but their solutions were tailored to the materials and rhythms of their homes. The stone city concentrates human achievement into a defined, awe-inspiring space. The green city disperses that achievement across the land itself, making the entire territory a monument to sustainable living. This unique adaptation, this green urbanism, may be the Amazon's most valuable lesson. It demonstrates a form of civilization that did not simply occupy a place, but became a symbiotic part of its ecosystem, a whisper of architecture within an endless, productive garden. The endurance of these garden cities across centuries raises a vital question about the world they lived within. What was the climate like during their golden age, and did it play a role in their story? Emerging evidence suggests that the rise and flourishing of societies like the coincided with a long period of relative climatic stability in the Amazon. For hundreds of years, rainfall patterns were likely more predictable, the wet and dry seasons following a reliable rhythm. This stability would have been the foundation upon which they built their world. Their entire civilization was an elaborate dance with water, a system fine-tuned to a specific environmental tempo. The canals, causeways, and raised fields were not just engineering marvels. They were brilliant adaptations to the known challenges of their home, allowing them to harness the annual floods rather than be defeated by them. This deep generational knowledge of their local climate was woven into the very layout of their cities. But climates are not static, they breathe and shift over time. Paleoclimatologists, scientists who study ancient weather patterns, find clues in lake sediments and soil cores that hint at periods of significant change. There is evidence that during the latter part of the era and in other regions, the Amazon may have experienced extended droughts or periods of intense, unpredictable rainfall. For a society whose existence was a precise negotiation with water, even a slight but persistent shift in the rules could have profound consequences. A long drought would lower water tables, leaving their elaborate canal networks dry and their aquatic highways useless. Their raised fields, designed for controlled flooding, might have struggled. Conversely, a period of catastrophic, relentless rains could have overwhelmed their drainage systems, washing away crops and eroding the very earthworks that define their landscape. This introduces a powerful, humbling layer to their history. Their sophisticated systems were a triumph of adaptation, but they were adaptations to a particular set of conditions. When those conditions changed beyond a certain threshold, the very strategies that made them strong could have become vulnerabilities. Studying this interplay is not about assigning a single cause for their decline, but about understanding resilience. It shows a society that mastered its environment for generations, only to face a challenge that perhaps even their deep knowledge could not fully counter. This deep time perspective is where their story speaks directly to us. We live in an era of rapid, human-driven climate change, facing our own profound environmental shifts. The ancient Amazonians offer a case study, not a blueprint, in long-term adaptation. They demonstrate the incredible power of working with ecological rhythms, of building systems that enhance rather than deplete their surroundings. Their eventual challenges remind us that resilience is not a permanent state, but a continuous process of learning and adjustment. Their legacy, then, is a dual lesson. It shows the heights human societies can reach when they listen closely to the land, and it whispers a caution about the fragility of even the most ingenious systems when the world they were built for begins to change. The scale of what we have already found is almost incomprehensible, yet it represents only the faintest glimpse. The areas illuminated by LIDAR so far are mere pinpricks on the vast canvas of the Amazon, tiny windows cut into an endless green curtain. It is a humbling fact that over 90% of the immense basin remains a complete mystery to this penetrating light. For every sprawling garden city we have mapped, there could be a dozen more still sleeping in the darkness beneath the trees. This means the story we are telling today is not the final draft, it is the thrilling prologue. The future of discovery here is not about confirming what we know, but about being prepared to be astonished all over again. The next wave of exploration will likely be driven by a new generation of technology, making the process faster and more accessible. Drone-based LIDAR systems are becoming more powerful and affordable, allowing smaller research teams to survey dense, remote areas that are impossible for large aircraft to reach. Imagine a quiet drone humming over a previously inaccessible river valley, its lasers painting a digital portrait of the ground below, revealing outlines no one has seen for 1,000 years. This technological shift promises to democratize discovery, opening up the deepest heart of the rainforest to a new kind of gaze. With this expanded vision, researchers speculate about what forms these new chapters might take. We might uncover urban centers that dwarf anything found so far, true metropolises of the green world. We could encounter entirely different architectural languages, Societies that expressed their cosmology and power through shapes and patterns we have not yet learned to recognize. Perhaps most transformative would be evidence of the connections between these worlds. Did the network trade with the mound builders of Acre? Were there continental exchange routes for rare stones, feathers, or knowledge, following those long, straight causeways that seem to point toward the horizon? Finding physical proof of such interaction would reveal not a series of isolated civilizations, but a connected, humming continent of diverse cultures. A tapestry of innovation woven across 6 million square kilometers. The current discoveries, as breathtaking as they are likely just the first chapter of a story that will continue to unfold for decades. Every new survey flight, every new data set, holds the potential to shatter another assumption, to introduce a new character into this ancient narrative. This is the exhilarating promise of a living science. Our textbooks are not being rewritten once, they are being entered into a state of permanent, wondrous revision. The true magnitude of the Amazon's human past is still waiting for its light to return. The same laser light that revealed lost cities is now illuminating our own world in startling ways. The breakthrough in the Amazon was not just an archaeological triumph. It was a powerful demonstration of what this technology could do, accelerating its adoption across dozens of other fields that shape our lives today. The very challenge of filtering out a dense jungle canopy forced engineers to create smarter, more sophisticated software. These advanced algorithms, born from the need to see through leaves, have become incredibly versatile tools. In forestry, for instance, scientists are now using adapted LIDAR to map forest biomass with unprecedented accuracy. By measuring the volume of trees from the air, they can estimate how much carbon a forest is storing, providing crucial data for global climate agreements and helping nations track their progress in protecting these vital ecosystems. It is a direct spin-off, using a tool developed to understand ancient environmental stewardship to help guide modern conservation efforts. The utility extends far beyond the green world. In geology and disaster planning, LIDAR is a game changer. By creating hyper-detailed models of the Earth's surface, it can reveal hidden fault lines, map landslide risks, and model exactly how floodwaters would flow through a city or a valley. This allows urban planners and engineers to design safer infrastructure, to build bridges and roads in the most stable locations, and to create evacuation plans that save lives. The technology is even being used to map the intricate details of modern cities themselves, from planning new subway lines to monitoring the slow subsidence of historic buildings. This is the beautiful, circular journey of discovery. A tool aimed at uncovering the deep past, at listening to the whispers of ancient civilizations, has proven so powerful that it is now helping us navigate the complexities of our present and future. The quest to understand how societies thrived in the Amazon is, in a very real sense, providing us with the vision to build a more resilient world. It reminds us that the pursuit of knowledge is never just about looking backward. It connects threads across time, turning the solutions of yesterday into the safeguards of tomorrow. The legend of El Dorado casts a long, shimmering shadow over the Amazon. For centuries, it has driven explorers to madness and filled maps with fantasies of a city paved with gold. Now, with real cities emerging from the forest floor, a tempting but dangerous connection is being made. Sensational headlines often reach for that familiar, glittering label, calling these places the real El Dorado. It is a compelling story, but it is the wrong one, and clinging to it risks blinding us to a truth far more valuable. These were not cities of gold. They were civilizations built from the earth itself. Their monuments were pyramids of packed soil, their palaces likely grand structures of wood and thatch, materials that returned to the forest when their time was done. Their wealth was not measured in precious metal, but in a full harvest, in a well-maintained canal, in the social harmony needed to keep a vast garden city thriving for generations. To call this El Dorado is to misunderstand everything these societies achieved. It reduces a profound chapter in human history to a shallow treasure hunt, replacing the intricate story of cultural innovation with a simplistic quest for shiny objects. The real treasure here was not something you could hold in your hand, it was a system, a way of life. It was the knowledge of how to feed thousands without destroying the land, how to build community across a managed landscape, how to find abundance within the limits of a rainforest. This is a different kind of wealth altogether, one of resilience and intelligence. The myth of El Dorado speaks to a colonial mindset, a desire to extract and possess. The reality of the Amazonian cities speaks to a philosophy of cultivation and integration. One is a story of taking, the other in giving back. By letting go of the golden fantasy, we clear the space to appreciate the authentic marvel before us. We see not a failed quest for mineral riches, but a stunningly successful experiment in sustainable living. Their legacy is not a lost hoard, but a living lesson written in the soil, waiting for us to finally read it. The geometry on the screen is breathtaking, but it is a map of silence. It shows us the stage, but tells us nothing of the play. To hear the story, we must listen to the whispers left behind in the soil, the small, tangible fragments of a world that once was. This is where the laser's grand vision meets the patient work of the trowel, where the sweeping digital map guides hands to uncover the intimate details of a life. Following the precise coordinates from the sky, archaeologists return to the ground, to the exact footprints of those ancient platforms and plazas. There, they carefully sift through the earth, and what they find transforms those sterile lines on a screen into a living, breathing society. They uncover fragments of pottery, not as broken trash, but as masterpieces of daily art. Some vessels are simple and sturdy, designed for storing grain or carrying water from the canal. Others are exquisitely crafted, adorned with intricate geometric patterns or stylized figures of animals and spirits, their surfaces polished to a fine sheen. Each curve and symbol is a message, a fingerprint of the artist's culture and cosmology. Alongside the pottery lie stone tools, axes and grinding stones worn smooth by generations of use. A discarded spindle whorl, used for making thread, speaks of textile production and clothing. Charred seeds and animal bones, found in ancient hearths, reveal a detailed menu, telling us they farmed maize and manioc and fished the rich waterways, building a diet from the managed landscape around them. These objects are the true archives of this civilization. A unique pottery design found in two distant cities, separated by hundreds of kilometers of forest, becomes a clue to ancient trade routes or shared cultural beliefs. A whisper of connection across a vast green world. The quality of the craftsmanship tells us about specialization, that there were individuals who dedicated their lives to perfecting these arts, supported by a society that valued beauty and ritual in everyday objects. This is how we move from seeing a city to knowing its people. The laser shows us the causeway, but the worn path on a stone tool tells us of the person who walked it. The scan reveals the ceremonial plaza, but the fragments of a finely painted bowl help us imagine the ceremonies that took place there. These artifacts are the echoes of laughter, of routine, of prayer. They are the silent testimony that fills the grand, empty spaces on the map with the warmth of human experience, reminding us that every line we see from the sky was once drawn by hands and walked by feet, and filled with the vibrant, forgotten music of daily life, The genius of this civilization flowed with the water itself. The laser maps do not just show canals, they reveal a meticulously planned hydrological network, a living machine that turned the seasonal floods from a threat into the very source of their prosperity. These waterways were the lifeblood of the cities, serving multiple, intertwined purposes that sustained a complex society. They were, first and foremost, transportation corridors. In a landscape that could transform from solid ground to a shallow sea, a canoe on a canal was the fastest, most reliable way to move. Imagine goods, messages, and people gliding along these straight, managed channels, connecting distant plazas and markets with an efficiency that footpaths in the mud could never match. This connectivity was the glue that held the low-density urban network together, making a vast, garden-like city function as a single, cohesive whole. But the canals were far more than aquatic roads. Researchers studying the shapes and placements of these features believe they were also sophisticated aquaculture systems. By controlling water levels and creating still ponds or managed channels, the ancient engineers could have cultivated fish and other aquatic resources. This transforms the image from simple water management to active protein farming. Instead of just hoping to catch fish in the wild floods, they likely created ideal, predictable environments to raise them, ensuring a steady, renewable food supply that was rich in essential nutrients. This level of planning moves far beyond simple survival. It speaks to a society thinking in terms of long-term abundance and nutritional health, engineering their landscape to provide for their needs reliably. Season after season, the soil dug to create these life-giving canals did not go to waste. It was piled and packed to form the raised causeways that run like straight, deliberate lines across the savanna. This was a brilliant act of recycling, turning a byproduct of one essential system into the foundation of another. These causeways were monumental in their own right, often standing several meters high and running for astonishing distances. In the dry months, they were elevated walkways above the grassy plain. When the rains came and the world turned to water, they became the only dry paths for miles, linear islands that kept the entire social and economic network open. They ensured that a farmer could still reach a ceremonial center, that a leader could still visit an outlying community, that the rhythm of civic life could continue uninterrupted by the flood. Their sheer straightness also suggests another, subtler function. A causeway that points unerringly toward a distant pyramid or plaza is not just a road, it is a statement. It visually and physically manifests connection, authority, and territorial control, marking the landscape as designed, owned, and integrated. When you see this system from above, the full picture emerges. The canals and causeways were not separate projects. They were two parts of a single, elegant design. The water and the earth were in constant conversation, each shaping and supporting the other. This was more than infrastructure, it was the civilization's circulatory system. The canals carried nutrients, food, and people, the life-giving flow. The causeways carried the social order, communication, and ceremony, the stabilizing structure. Together, they wove the dispersed communities into a resilient, functioning organism. This integration reveals a worldview that modern society is only recently beginning to appreciate deeply. For these ancient Amazonians, engineering was not about dominating nature. It was a form of deep ecological partnership. They did not see a divide between the built environment and the natural world. They saw a continuum. To build a canal was to invite the water to work for them. To raise a causeway was to guide the earth to support them. Their greatest achievement was this holistic vision, a testament to a culture that understood its place within the living systems of the rainforest and shaped them with a master's touch for the benefit of all. The perfect geometry of the garden cities suggests a society in harmony, but the laser maps also tell a more complex human story. Scattered among the plazas and causeways, researchers have identified another type of structure, one that introduces a shadow into this sunlit world. Around certain settlements, the scans reveal patterns of concentric ditches and embankments, deep trenches and raised walls that form rings around the community. At first glance, these seem like another facet of the brilliant water management system, and they likely served that purpose, controlling drainage and perhaps even acting as moats during the rainy season. But their form and placement have led some archaeologists to a different, more intriguing interpretation. These rings are often substantial, with steep sides and a single, narrow entrance point that could be easily watched or blocked. This design does not just manage water, it controls access. When you look at a settlement encircled by such earthworks, positioned on a raised platform with a single causeway leading in, the image that emerges is less of an open garden and more of a place that could be secured. This possibility adds a vital layer of realism to our understanding. It suggests that life within these thriving networks was not a perpetual peace. The same resources and fertile lands that allowed these civilizations to flourish could also have become sources of tension. Neighboring polities, perhaps competing for influence, trade dominance, or the best agricultural land, may have experienced periods of conflict. These earthworks could represent a practical response to that reality, a communal investment in security. This does not diminish their achievements, it humanizes them. It places the Amazonian civilizations firmly within the universal narrative of human societies, where periods of remarkable cooperation and cultural flowering can exist alongside intervals of competition and the need for defense. They were not mystical beings living in perfect utopia. They were people navigating the same complex challenges of community, resource management, and territorial relations that we see in ancient Europe, Asia, and. Their response, however, was uniquely their own. They did not build towering stone walls or vast citadels of rock. Their fortifications, if that is what they were built from the very earth they cherished, seamlessly blending defensive utility with the landscape engineering that defined their world. A ditch was also a canal. A raised embankment also guided water and provided a vantage point. This dual-purpose design speaks to a profound practicality, a civilization that prepared for all aspects of life, from the nourishing flood to the potential threat, with the same grounded ingenuity. Recognizing this possibility completes the picture, moving us from a vision of passive harmony to one of active, resilient society. It shows a people who built not just for abundance, but for permanence and security, crafting a world that could endure through both the seasons of growth and the seasons of challenge. The straight lines across the Earth may have also pointed toward the stars. Preliminary studies of the largest platform mounds and the orientation of those long, ruler-straight causeways are revealing a fascinating pattern. Researchers are finding that the axes of these monumental structures often align with significant celestial events. Like the sunrise on the summer solstice or the position of particularly bright stars as they first appear on the horizon. This is a discovery still in its early stages, but the implications are profound. If these alignments are confirmed through more detailed surveys and on-the-ground verification, they would show that the architects of the Amazon were not just engineers of the land, but also careful watchers of the sky. They would join a global tradition of ancient astronomers, from the builders of Stonehenge to the Maya calendar keepers, who sought meaning and order in the movements of the heavens. For these rainforest societies, incorporating astronomy into their city plans would have served a deeply practical purpose. Marking the solstices would have provided a reliable celestial calendar. Knowing precisely when the sun reached its northernmost or southernmost point would have told them when the dry season was ending or when the floods would soon arrive, allowing them to prepare their fields and manage their intricate water systems with perfect timing. The sky was their clock, and their cities were built to read it, but the purpose likely extended far beyond the practical. Aligning a ceremonial pyramid with the rising sun on the longest day of the year transforms architecture into a spiritual event. It connects the earthly realm of the city, with its plazas and people, directly to the cosmic order. It embeds the cycles of time, the turning of the seasons, and the journey of celestial bodies into the very foundation of daily life. A leader standing on a platform mound during such an alignment would be physically positioned at the intersection of human society and the universe. A powerful symbol of authority derived from a deep understanding of natural law. This potential celestial connection adds a new layer of sophistication to our understanding of their worldview. It suggests they saw their existence as part of a much larger, orderly system. Their engineered landscape was not just a response to environmental challenges, it was a mirror of the heavens, a way to bring the predictable, majestic rhythms of the cosmos down to the forest floor and make them a tangible part of their world. The silent geometry of their cities, then, might be a language we are only beginning to decipher, one written not just in soil and water, but in light and shadow cast by the sun and stars. These monumental discoveries are not confined to the past, they are actively reshaping the present. For the nations that share the Amazon basin, this is a moment of profound cultural reawakening. Countries like Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, and Peru have long seen their grand historical narratives focused elsewhere, on the iconic stone citadels of the Andes or the distant empires of. Now, the laser maps are revealing that some of the most astonishing chapters of human history were written right here, beneath their own canopy. This provides a deep, powerful source of pre-colonial pride that is uniquely their own, a homegrown legacy of ingenuity that stands shoulder to shoulder with any ancient wonder in the world. The impact of this is already being felt. National museums are beginning to redesign their exhibits, moving artifacts from quiet corners to center stage, framed by stunning digital reconstructions that show the true scale of the cities they came from. Educational curricula, which may have once skimmed over the Amazon's ancient past, are being rewritten to include these societies as major civilizations, not footnotes. For students in these countries, learning history is becoming an act of rediscovering their own backyard, a source of identity that is both local and globally significant. This shift in historical understanding carries powerful modern weight, particularly for the indigenous communities who are the direct descendants of these landscape architects. For generations, their oral histories and claims to deep territorial roots were often marginalized or dismissed. The laser evidence changes that conversation. It provides monumental, scientific proof of their ancestors' achievements, a tangible record of sophisticated societies that thrived in these very forests for centuries. This evidence strengthens contemporary movements for land rights, cultural recognition, and political representation. It supports the argument that these are not just ancestral homelands in a spiritual sense, but are literally the engineered legacies of their forebears. Places that their societies shaped and were shaped by in an unbroken chain of stewardship. The discovery validates their knowledge and their deep connection to the land in a language that modern institutions are compelled to acknowledge. It fosters a new kind of dialogue, one where scientific discovery and traditional knowledge converge to tell a fuller, more respectful story. This isn't about reclaiming a lost golden age, but about reclaiming a narrative. It allows these nations and their indigenous peoples to define their heritage on their own terms, rooted in a history of resilience and brilliance that was always there, waiting for the light to find it once more. This monumental legacy is written in the most fragile of mediums. These were not cities of stone, but of earth. Their pyramids were sculpted from soil, their causeways packed from clay, their plazas leveled from the very ground they stood upon. For centuries, the forest itself was their greatest guardian. The dense canopy acted as a protective umbrella, shielding the delicate earthen forms from the full force of tropical downpours. A complex web of roots knit the soil together, holding the ancient architecture in a living embrace. This symbiosis kept the cities hidden and preserved. Now that same fragility makes them desperately vulnerable in our modern, rushing world. When a patch of forest is cleared, the exposure is catastrophic. Without the tree cover, the first heavy rains strike the bare earth directly. What took generations to build with careful labor can be washed into shapeless mud in just a few rainy seasons. The intricate geometry of a civilization literally melting back into the landscape. The threat is not just from the sky, but from the ground. Looters searching for saleable artifacts dig reckless pits through these sites. In minutes, their shovels can slice through centuries of layered history, destroying the precise context that tells us when things happened and how people lived. A looted site is not just damaged, it is rendered mute, its story torn apart and scattered. Preserving this rediscovered heritage has become a race against time and competing pressures. The first, most urgent step is legal protection, designating these areas as official cultural heritage sites to create a barrier against unchecked deforestation or development. This must go hand in hand with supporting the forest itself, recognizing that the health of the ancient monuments is inseparable from the health of the living canopy above them. Finally, science is rising to the challenge with new, gentle ways of listening. Researchers are pioneering non-invasive techniques like ground-penetrating radar and detailed drone photography that can study a site's secrets without ever breaking the soil. This is the new frontier of conservation, a delicate balance of using technology to understand while using wisdom to protect. The great irony is palpable. We finally developed the eyes to see these lost cities, just as the world that has hidden them for so long is changing faster than ever. Their survival now depends on a new kind of stewardship, one that values the whisper of history in the soil as much as the timber above it. The same laser data that guides archaeologists can also build bridges to your living room. This is the promise of digital archaeology, transforming raw points of light into portals anyone can step through. The immense three-dimensional scans captured from the sky are not just for researchers, they are the foundation for a new kind of public experience. Using advanced software, these billions of data points can be woven into breathtakingly detailed three-dimensional models, digital twins of the lost cities that you can explore from anywhere in the world. Imagine putting on a virtual reality headset and suddenly finding yourself hovering above the ancient savanna. Watching as the green canopy digitally peels away beneath you to reveal the geometric causeways and pyramidal mounds of the. You could take a virtual walk along one of those straight, raised roads, seeing the scale of the plazas from a human perspective, something even a scientist on the ground cannot fully grasp. Museums are already beginning to build exhibits around these reconstructions, creating immersive installations where visitors can literally fly over the landscape. Guided by that highlight features and tell the stories of the people who built them. This digital access does more than just entertain, it fundamentally democratizes heritage. A student in a classroom halfway across the globe, someone who may never have the chance to visit the Amazon, can now stand in the center of a lost plaza and feel the awe of discovery. It makes this profound chapter of human history tangible and immediate, turning abstract data into an emotional connection. For a young person seeing this, it might spark a lifelong passion for archaeology, history, or conservation, inspiring the next generation of explorers and guardians. Perhaps most importantly, this widespread digital engagement builds a global constituency for protection. When people feel a personal connection to these places, when they have virtually walked the causeways and understood the scale of the achievement, they become invested in the story's continuation. They are more likely to care about the fate of the rainforest that guards these treasures, understanding that saving the canopy is also about saving a library of human ingenuity. Digital archaeology closes the loop, ensuring that the light used to reveal these cities also becomes the light that illuminates their importance for everyone, creating a wave of awareness and support that these fragile earthen wonders so urgently need. These discoveries are not locked away in a museum vault, they are alive in the landscape, and that presents a remarkable opportunity. The same awe that draws us to these digital reconstructions could one day become a vital force for their protection. Imagine a future where, instead of viewing the rainforest solely as timber or potential farmland, local and indigenous communities have another path forward, one built on the value of their own deep heritage. This is the potential of carefully managed, sustainable cultural tourism. The model would need to be fundamentally different from the mass tourism that can overwhelm historic sites elsewhere in the world. This would not be about busloads of visitors and sprawling resorts. It would be small-scale, community-led, and deeply respectful. Think of guided journeys where visitors, led by community members themselves, learn to see the forest with new eyes. They wouldn't just be shown a LIDAR map, they would walk the same earth, learning to identify the subtle rise of an ancient causeway underfoot, hearing the stories of the ancestors who built it, and understanding the living ecosystem that now guards it. The economic benefits from such thoughtful tourism could provide a powerful, practical alternative to deforestation. It creates a direct financial incentive to keep the forest standing and the archaeological sites intact, because their preservation becomes the source of livelihood. This aligns the goals of cultural heritage, ecological conservation, and community well-being into a single, powerful cycle. Preservation supports the tourism, which supports the people, who in turn become the most passionate guardians of both the ancient cities and the modern forest. Of course, this vision requires immense care and absolute respect. The pitfalls are clear: exploitation, disruption, and the loss of cultural sanctity. Success hinges entirely on community consent and leadership from the very beginning. The communities themselves must control the narrative, the access, and the benefits. It means turning the historical discovery into a tool they can wield for their own sustainable development, on their own terms. When done right, it transforms the ancient cities from relics of the past into active participants in the future, proving that the greatest treasures of history are those that can help build a better tomorrow. A single laser map is a question, not an answer. To truly understand the lives of those who built these garden cities, we must listen to more than just the shape of the earth. We need to hear from the soil itself, from the trees, from the ancient climate, and most importantly, from the living memory of the people whose home this has always been. This is why the full story is not being written by archaeologists in isolation. It is emerging from a powerful collaboration, a symphony of different scientific voices, all tuned to the same mystery. Picture a soil scientist kneeling in a patch of that dark, fertile terra. By analyzing its chemical makeup, they can determine what was grown there and how the soil was managed, turning a color in the ground into a recipe for ancient agriculture. A botanist walking through the surrounding forest, meanwhile, might notice something curious. The distribution of certain useful trees, like Brazil nut or fruit-bearing palms, often forms a distinct pattern around these ancient sites. A ghostly footprint of intentional planting that persists centuries after the gardeners are gone. This is evidence of the agroforestry system, not from a document, but from the living library of the jungle. Then there are the climatologists who look even deeper. By extracting long cores of sediment from lake beds, they can read the history of rainfall and drought locked in the layers. Piecing together the environmental stage upon which these civilizations rose and eventually faced their challenges. Each of these fields brings a different piece of the puzzle. The soil tells us how they fed themselves. The forest tells us how they curated their world. The climate tells us what pressures they endured. But the most vital voice in this chorus comes from anthropology and direct partnership with indigenous communities. Their oral histories and deep ecological knowledge provide the cultural context, the meaning behind the patterns. They can explain why a certain tree was planted near a plaza, or what a particular geometric shape might have symbolized. This interdisciplinary synthesis is where the magic happens. It transforms a digital model of a city into a vibrant, four-dimensional understanding of a society. We move from seeing a causeway to comprehending the trade it enabled, from mapping a plaza to imagining the ceremonies held under a solstice sun. This collaborative model does more than reconstruct the past. It offers a profound lesson for our present. It shows us that understanding any complex system, whether a lost civilization or our own modern environmental challenges, requires us to look beyond the boundaries of a single field. The story of the Amazon is not just an archaeological discovery. It is a testament to what we can learn when we bring all our ways of knowing together, listening to the whispers of the earth, the sky, and the people who remember. This evidence does more than rewrite history. It rewrites our theory of history itself. For over a century, a powerful idea called environmental determinism held sway in anthropology. It was a simple, seemingly logical equation. The harsh tropics, with their poor soils and relentless diseases, were seen as a kind of prison for human potential. This environment, the theory went, actively prevented the rise of complex societies. It dictated a life of small, nomadic bands, forever limited by the jungle's unforgiving rules. The Amazon was the textbook example of this idea, the ultimate green desert where civilization could never take root. The laser maps have not just challenged this theory, they have dismantled it completely. What we are seeing is the opposite of limitation. It is a breathtaking display of human agency, the power of a culture to observe, understand, and then actively reshape its world. The new framework that fits the evidence is known as niche construction. Think of a niche not as a pre-made slot in nature, but as something that can be built. These ancient societies did not simply occupy an environmental niche, they engineered one. They looked at the seasonal floods and saw not an obstacle, but an opportunity for canals and raised fields. They studied the thin forest soil and invented a recipe to make it permanently fertile. They managed the wild jungle, curating it into a productive, layered garden. Their civilization was not limited by their environment, it was literally constructed from it. Every causeway, every patch of black earth, every aligned plaza is a vote against determinism and a testament to cultural choice. They prove that a society's trajectory is not a foregone conclusion, written by climate and geography. It is a story written by human ingenuity, by collective will, and by the profound decision to partner with a place rather than be subdued by it. The Amazon, therefore, transforms in our understanding. It is no longer a case study in what nature prevents. It stands as one of humanity's greatest monuments to what a culture can create when it learns to work within the logic of the living world. This shift changes everything, turning the rainforest from a backdrop in the human story into a canvas, one where ancient societies painted a masterpiece of sustainable innovation. The laser maps give us the blueprint, but not the daily life lived within its lines. For every question this technology answers, it seems to raise a dozen more, each one a new doorway into a world we are just beginning to know. We can see the grand plazas, but we cannot yet hear the ceremonies that filled them. We trace the long causeways, but we do not know the names of the leaders who ordered them built. The sheer scale of the engineering implies a sophisticated political structure, but what was it exactly? Was power held by a single, revered chief in the largest pyramid, or was it a council of elders from different lineages? The evidence of coordinated labor across vast distances suggests a strong central authority, yet the low-density, garden city model might also point to a more federated system of allied communities. Each new site scanned adds another piece to this political puzzle, offering clues in the arrangement of buildings and the hierarchy of settlements. Beyond governance, the mysteries deepen into the realm of belief and mind. What were the religious cosmologies that guided these societies? The potential alignments of mounds with solstice sunrises hint at a sacred connection to the sky, but what stories did they tell about the stars, the forest, and their own place within it? The intricate patterns on their pottery, the stylized figures of animals and spirits, these are fragments of a symbolic language. Did this visual language ever develop into a more formal system of recording information, a way to pass down history or laws? Finding evidence of symbolic communication, perhaps on a monument or a rare artifact, would be a discovery to rival the cities themselves, offering a direct voice from the past. Then there is the question of connection. We see individual networks, but how did these great garden civilizations interact with one another across the immense basin? Were they aware of the mound builders 1,000 kilometers to the north? Did they trade exotic feathers for rare stones, or share ideas about water management through far-reaching exchange routes? A unique pottery style found in two distant regions could be the first clue to a continent-wide web of interaction, revealing an Amazon that was not a collection of isolated worlds, but a humming network of innovation. This is the thrilling, open-ended nature of this new frontier. Each newly scanned kilometer of forest holds the potential to address these profound mysteries. The research is no longer about proving these societies existed. That chapter is closed. Now, it is about understanding who they were, how they thought, and how they connected. This ensures that Amazonian archaeology will remain a vibrant frontier of discovery for generations to come, a journey driven equally by precise data and by pure, enduring wonder. Their greatest monument was not a pyramid, but the forest itself. The most profound legacy of these ancient cities is not carved in stone. It is woven into the very fabric of the land, an ecological inheritance that has endured for centuries. Take those patches of dark earth, the Terra. They are not relics, they are still active. Even today, farmers across the Amazon seek out these ancient, human-made soils because they remain astonishingly fertile, a living technology that continues to produce bounty long after its creators have passed. This soil is a testament to a different kind of permanence, one built on enriching the earth rather than depleting it. But the human fingerprint extends far beyond these dark patches. Walk through what we might call a pristine part of the rainforest and look closely at the trees. Researchers have noticed something remarkable. Certain species, like the towering Brazil nut tree or the fruit-bearing peach palm, are not randomly scattered. They often appear in unexpected clusters or in densities that defy natural chance, especially around known archaeological sites. These are not wild forests in the way we once thought. They are, in many places, the ghostly orchards of a lost civilization, the enduring result of generations of intentional planting, tending, and cultivation. The trees we see today are the descendants of seeds chosen and placed by ancient hands, a silent, living archive of their dietary and cultural preferences. This forces a complete reimagining of the landscape. The Amazon is not, and perhaps never was, a virgin wilderness untouched by humanity. It is something far more interesting and complex. It is a vast, living palimpsest. Think of a palimpsest as an ancient parchment, where old writing was scraped away so the page could be reused, but where faint traces of the original text always remain beneath the surface. The Amazon is like that. The first layer, the original text, is the ancient natural ecosystem. Then, for thousands of years, human societies wrote their story across it, not with ink but with fire, with axes, and most importantly with seeds. They sculpted the forest's composition, encouraging useful species and managing the understory. Then, after the great population decline, the forest grew back, a new layer of green writing covering the old. But the original human text never fully vanished. It lingers in the soil, in the arrangement of the trees, in the very genetic legacy of the plants we now think of as wild. This changes everything. It means the iconic rainforest, the ultimate symbol of untouched nature, is in fact one of the longest-running experiments in human-guided ecology on the planet. It is not a garden that was abandoned, but a garden that went feral, its original design still whispering in the patterns of life we see today. This realization shifts our entire relationship with this place. The goal cannot be to preserve a static, mythical wilderness that never truly existed. The goal must be to understand this deep, historical partnership between people and the forest, and to learn from its wisdom. The ancient Amazonians did not see a divide between culture and nature. They saw a continuum, a world where human communities could be a creative, nurturing force within the living system. Their legacy challenges us to move beyond the simplistic choice between conquering the land or locking it away. It invites us to imagine a future where we, too, can learn to write our story upon the land not as a record of extraction, but as a lasting, fertile script of mutual thriving. The final map drawn by this light is not of a place, but of a possibility. These laser scans do far more than chart forgotten streets and plazas. They illuminate an entire hidden chapter in the story of humanity, one written not in conquest, but in careful partnership. They teach us a fundamental truth we had nearly forgotten, that civilizations can not only survive within challenging environments, they can flourish by becoming a creative part of them. The ancient Amazonians were not passive inhabitants of a green desert. They were master engineers of a living world, architects of soil and stewards of water. Their greatest innovation was a society designed to last, built on the principle of giving back more than it took. This revelation turns our assumptions about progress and power inside out. For centuries, we measured advancement by monuments of stone that stood against nature. Here, advancement is measured by fertile earth that worked with it, a legacy so seamless it literally became the forest. This discovery also humbles our sense of discovery itself. It proves that history is not always buried deep. It is often hidden in plain sight, woven into the landscape right beneath our feet, simply waiting for the right perspective, the right tool. To bring its patterns into focus, we now stand at a remarkable intersection, where cutting-edge technology and ancient tradition meet to tell a single, richer story. The lasers give us the eyes to see, while the living memory of indigenous communities gives the story its heart and meaning. This partnership is the new model for understanding our shared past, one built on respect and collaboration. These emerging truths come with a profound responsibility. The same canopy that guarded these cities for centuries is now under threat, and with it, this irreplaceable library of human ingenuity. Protecting this heritage is no longer an academic concern. It is an urgent act of preservation for a legacy that belongs to all of us. It challenges us to look at the Amazon with dual vision, to see it simultaneously as a vital ecological sanctuary and as the world's largest open-air museum of sustainable living. The lessons etched into this land are not relics, they are roadmaps. As we face our own era of environmental uncertainty, the ancient Amazonians offer a powerful case study in resilience. They show us that a thriving future is not about dominating our world, but about learning its logic and integrating our lives within its cycles. The story of the Amazon is far from finished. We have only just lifted the first corner of a vast, green page. With every new pulse of light from the sky, another line of that ancient story comes into view, waiting to teach us, to inspire us, and to guide us forward.